What is happening, guys? Cowboy here, and welcome to my companion's guide for Code Vein. So in this video, we're going to be showcasing the combat potential of each companion, as well as talking about their blood codes, in addition to the buff that they give you as you go into combat. And first up, we have Louie. Now, Louie comes from a quality build, which is Prometheus. There's a lot of different skills in Prometheus, mainly focused around just kind of enhancing his overall damage. She has stuff like Flame Weapon, obviously, as well as Firestorm, so pretty decent choice to bring against enemies that are not resistant to fire. On top of that, his attack damage is going to go up as he continues to attack enemies. He has access to Phantom Assault, a pretty decent ability for mobility and just staying up on the target. And the one thing that's pretty interesting about Louie is the buff he provides isn't even a buff he has access to. Louie actually gives you access to the Overdrive buff, which, as you can see right here, Overdrive is a pretty substantial buff, giving a 25% attack power increase, and that buff will last all the way up until you take damage. All in all, Louie is a pretty well-balanced companion for pretty much any situation, but he excels when brought along with a class that is high in dexterity or evasive stats, so that you can take full advantage of the Overdrive buff, really maximizing that 25% damage boost. Moving on to our next companion, we have Yakumo, and Yakumo is the two-handed sword user that you can bring along, essentially a strength build companion. Yakumo offers pretty aggressive playstyle, has very potent damage, good AoE potential, and the buff he's going to provide is Foul Blood Barrier. Foul Blood Barrier is a pretty significant defensive buff. It's only going to work for a single attack, but it's going to reduce the damage you receive from that attack by 50%, making it a really solid choice, especially if you're running a more glass cannon oriented build where taking a big hit could obviously mean death. Next up in our companion list is going to be Mia. Mia is the range support that you gain access to fairly early in the story. I'd say you gotta play probably about an hour or two into the story, depending on how fast you're making progress before you get her. Mia is a range support class. Looking at her abilities, you can see she has access to a couple of different ice-related moves. In addition to that, she has a decent weapon art. And the most valuable thing about Mia is the passive she provides, Blood-Sucking Blades. Now, Blood-Sucking Blades will multiply the drain rating of both the weapon attack and the blocking by 1.5, which is a pretty significant buff when it comes to drain. If you're unfamiliar with drain is the mechanic that allows you to pull back an Iker from attacking and blocking attacks. And if you're playing a class that is using Iker a lot, whether through weapon abilities or through magic, having a high drain rating is obviously very desirable. One of the things I really like about Mia is kind of looking at her here, you can see that all those ranged attacks she's doing, it's really great for taking out enemies that are kind of more annoying, that stay off in the distance, shooting at you or casting spells. Especially if you're playing as a heavier or slower class like the one I am right now with a greatsword. I think Mia is a really solid support option because she's going to be able to do the range damage to take out all the annoying enemies while you're up front taking care of the beefy ones. So all in all, a decent choice, and obviously very desirable because of the passive she brings to the table. Next up, we have everyone's new favorite waifu, Io. Now, Io initially starts off as a rather passive character that kind of just hangs out in the background. But as you progress through the story, she eventually does unlock and you're able to bring her along as a companion. All in all, I gotta say, Io is probably one of the best companions in the game. She has a lot of very potent spells. She has some decent mind-based spells that aren't even listed in her blood code, allowing her to do respectable amounts of damage. And on top of that, she's actually pretty formidable with that halberd. As you can see, she's just nuking the ranged characters very quickly. The buff that she provides is Regenerator, which is a 15% increase in the amount you're going to heal anytime you use one of your regenerations. And probably one of the greatest things about Io is in the event that you do go down in a combat, Io's resurrection, it will basically heal you more than a normal character. So whereas a normal character reses you, you're coming up with, I don't know, roughly a third of your health. If Io resurrects you, you're going to have like 50% of your health or more. So all in all, a very, very all-rounded support-style character that can also do significant damage, making her one of the ideal choices to bring along. Now, before we move on to the next couple companions, I do want to say they are very heavy spoiler-related as they tie directly into the story and progress. So if you're trying to avoid spoilers, I would suggest you stop watching at this point. Next up in our companion list, we have Jack. Now, Jack you initially get to play with when you go back and re-experience one of your memories from the past. All in all, he's a decent support-style character. He is considered kind of like a dex-based attacker. He does a lot of stagger, as you can see with that one attack. He is a big fan of spamming. But all in all, I feel that Jack is one of the weaker choices when looking for a companion. He does do a fair amount of blood damage. He does have the high stagger. The buff he provides is morale boost, which will increase your stamina by a flat 50, in addition to fully restoring it when he casts it. But my problem with Jack is that he's not very good at handling himself. You know, I'm just going to kind of sit here and block, and I'll let you see how he fights, but I feel that out of all the various companions, Jack tends to struggle the most when things really come down to it. You know, he can dispatch little characters like that guy in the back pretty quickly, but especially against characters like this big gal here. As you can see, he's still spamming that stagger attack, and obviously the larger enemies have bigger stagger thresholds, bosses have bigger stagger thresholds, and so ultimately the anti-stagger spam potential of his just kind of falls off. I mean, just you know, watching by now, I'm pretty sure this character was dead with every other companion that we had, and meanwhile Jack is still just like, I'm gonna stagger it one more time. Let me just one more time. You know, so he's not a terrible choice, but at the end of the day, I feel that pretty much every other companion is just kind of more effective at doing what they're trying to do. Whereas given Jack's playstyle and his blood code, you'd think he would be a lot more damage intensive and a lot more of a almost, you know, big damage glass cannon type support, but instead I just feel he doesn't perform all that. Next up, we have the wonderful lady in red, Ava. Now, Ava is a mage-style support. You get access to her pretty much the same time that you're going to gain access to Jack. She has a high stagger potential with Sand Edge, and obviously some pretty beefy spell damage available as well. She uses a bayonet, which you won't see her shoot all that often. Instead, she'll usually go towards her spells. And the buff she is going to offer you is Gift Prowess, which will temporarily increase the gift speed. So if you're playing as a mage, having Gift Prowess is pretty nice because it's just going to increase the speed of your casts. All in all, Ava's biggest strength is that she can general nuke pretty much anything given the chance. So with this playstyle where I'm kind of just sitting here and focusing on blocking, as long as she decides that she's in the mood to cast versus attacking, as you'll notice, she's able to just nuke enemies incredibly fast and do a ton of damage. Her biggest drawback is that being a mage, she is quite squishy. She doesn't have a lot of overall defense, and in a situation where she'd have to actually fight a fatty like this on her own, there's a pretty good chance she's going to get nuked and killed, which, you know, is obviously a drawback of the character. But as long as you're playing a beefier class or one that keeps the attention of enemies, I think Ava is a very solid choice for a companion. And the last companion on our list we'll be taking a look at is Mia version White. Now, even though you are still bringing along Mia, version White is actually a different support altogether. You know, White uses the Estrella class, which is significantly different from the previous class. She now gains access to lightning spikes, so she has a decent lightning nuke in her kit. And probably the most valuable thing she brings to the table is her buff, Gift Extension. Now, Gift Extension is a pretty significant duration enhancer. If you are a class that is playing around with a lot of weapon buffs or character buffs or whatever the case is, Gift Extension, as long as you cast your buff while it's active, it will increase the duration by 50% of anything you cast. So if you're casting something that would typically last a minute, it now lasts for 90 seconds. If you're casting something that would last for 30 seconds, it now lasts for 45. So all in all, a very, very attractive passive to have, especially as taking advantage of buff stacking is certainly a thing in Code Vein. And you'll also notice she is a bit more range attack spammy, which in my opinion I think makes her an even better range support than the initial Mia. So either way, guys, that is going to wrap up our companion guide. We have no idea if they're going to add more companions in the future, but I'd certainly love to see more added as DLC. But this is who we have access to now. So all in all, everyone definitely has something that's unique to them, but if I had to pick one that is going to be an all-around go-to, it would have to be Io. She just does a ton of damage and has excellent support-based abilities. If I had to go for a follow-up, it's got to be my boy Yakumo, because Yakumo can just go in and whoop ass completely on his own, even if you're dead, and that makes him a highly desirable companion. So either way, thanks for coming by and checking out the video. Hopefully this helped you decide on which companion you'd like to play with, and I'll catch you guys next time with more Code Vein.